Good morning, I'm Joe Fryer.
And I'm Savannah Sellers. Right now on Morning News Now, waterlogged this morning. Cities in parts of New England and New York are just starting the recovery process after torrential downpours sparked flash flooding across the region. Meanwhile, from the West Coast all the way to Florida, people still trying to beat the heat as triple-digit temperatures and dry conditions drag into another week. And the Southwest may soon see the longest heat wave on record. We have your complete forecast. Bloc Party. President Biden seeing major success during his Europe trip. Turkey now agreeing to back Sweden's bid to join NATO following a series of talks hosted by Biden and NATO's Secretary General. But there's more work to be done as world leaders gather this morning in Lithuania for the NATO summit. On the agenda, a possible pathway to membership for Ukraine. We've got all the latest developments. Also, amen to that. Why experts say attending church service can improve your mental and physical health. We'll have that and more in your weekly mental health check-in. And vacay all day. If you haven't made a dent in your days off, start putting in those requests, because get this, researchers say taking time off could actually be key to getting ahead in your career. It's a little bit of good news.
Right. There are those occasional places we talk to that force you to take your PTO because they believe that makes you a better employee.
Also, it's not as much of a part of the culture here as I feel it should be and as it is in many other places.
Exactly.
So we can help change that. Well, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us. We're going to begin with those extreme flash floods that are continuing to ravage the Northeast.
President Biden has declared a state of emergency for Vermont after some areas there received more than 10 inches of rain in just hours. The town of Ludlow was one of the areas hit hardest yesterday. This was the scene following the downpour, leaving the town completely cut off from emergency crews. Officials say the damage is already comparable to Tropical Storm Irene, which struck the region back in 2011. New York is also reeling from flash flooding that drenched Orange County on Sunday. State officials are beginning to assess the damage left behind as the water there recedes. Rescue teams are also looking for those who are still missing in the wake of the floods. Both floods in New York and Vermont have been described as once-in-a-thousand-year events. And across the South, the dangerous heat wave rolls on, leaving millions under an excessive heat warning. Places like Phoenix, high temps have been about 110 degrees for 10 straight days. The National Weather Service warns the heat wave could last into next week. We have Orange County Executive Stephen Newhouse standing by to tell us more about the state of emergency in New York. But first, let's bring in meteorologist Angie Lassman to tell us where the rain is heading next.
Yeah. Hey, Angie, good morning.
Good morning, guys. We still have those flood alerts up. We still have some rain lingering in parts of the New England area, but we're going to see that come to an end today. So that's what we see on the bright side of things, but still picking up a little additional rain for places like Burlington right now. And here's those flood alerts that we see in effect at this time. Mainly flood watches. We've got one flash flood warning in effect right now, but this does not take into consideration the river flooding. We're going to talk about that in a moment, but this is just when it comes to the additional rainfall and what we've already seen fallen in that area. Here's the system that we're continuing to watch. This is what I meant when I said we're going to see some drier skies here as we get through the later parts of today and especially into tomorrow. The system pulls away, takes with it most of the rain, but we'll still have some lingering showers this morning and maybe some spotty showers left over into the afternoon hours. Of course, any additional rain doesn't help the already really devastating situation we have going on in these areas. When we talk about river flooding, we've got a couple of spots that are dealing with major flood stages and moderate flood stages. Those are mainly focused through parts of Vermont and into New Hampshire. We've got a couple stretching a little farther south as well. But here's the flood alerts when you add those on. We've got the flash flood warning in effect for some of those places that you saw those moderate and major flood stages. And we're going to continue to be seeing that here as we go through the next day or so. We'll be watching for the best chance for storms in the northern plains, though, as we transition into the afternoon hours today. We've got a new front that's going to dive into parts of the center of the country, eventually stretch across parts of the Midwest, and it'll bring, once again, those heavy rains now focused towards places like Omaha, St. Louis, Kansas City could see some additional rainfall in Chicago, too. We'll be watching for that as we go through the day today with localized amounts up to 4 inches. So some flooding concerns there. And on top of that, some strong storms. We've got the hail possible. We've got the large or large hail and the strong winds as well, even a tornado or two possible. Same kind of area, but the biggest threat's going to be the baseball-size hail. And unfortunately, guys, as we get into tomorrow, this threat will shift a little farther to the east and include parts of the Midwest for our Wednesday.
Feels like we only have two choices right now: oppressive heat or severe storms.
That's about it, right?
All right. Angie, thank you.
Thanks, Angie. All right, well, now let's bring in Orange County Executive Stephen Newhouse with an update on the flooding in New York. Stephen, good morning. Thank you for joining us on what I'm sure is a busy day for you. So first, just walk us through what you are hearing from residents, seeing on the ground right now at this point, now that some of that water is starting to recede.
Good morning. Thanks for having me on. You know, it's definitely gotten better every day. Sunday was a complete nightmare for us. I mean, the first responders, we were literally trapped in the Highland Falls, Fort Montgomery, West Point area. If you responded as a first responder, the roads literally deteriorated after you came in, and we were pretty much trapped there till about midnight on Sunday night. So things have gotten a lot better. Unfortunately, did lose somebody, a young lady in her mid-40s. And now we're on the repair and assessment stage. We're doing multiple repairs on roads to open that whole area up, and obviously doing major assessments on bridges. Some of them have been so undermined that we really don't think that they can hold any weight like a car or a vehicle. So the folks themselves, the people, we set up an emergency shelter. Many people in that entire region have had significant damage to their homes and businesses. So we did tour the area yesterday with the governor, spoke to our congressional delegation. We're hoping to get some major FEMA monies to do some repairs there. West Point is also included in my area. They have some significant damage as well.
Wow, it's just terrible to hear about the bridges and the roads because, of course, that's a longer recovery road. I do want to talk now about that process and first play a little bit of sound from Governor Kathy Hochul yesterday about this process moving forward. First, let's listen to that, and I'll ask you something on the other side.
The first step is assessment. Assess the damage. Assess the monetary value of the damage so we can put in our request for FEMA assistance to help the communities have the resources they need to rebuild. We can't turn our eyes any longer to the fact that we have to build up areas, homes and businesses that are in low-lying areas are going to need to be lifted up. Otherwise, we're ignoring the reality that flooding is part of life now here in the state of New York.
So what is your plan to begin this recovery process? Where do you start with all those things you just laid out for us? And then also, I kind of want to seize on that last part of what the governor said there, which is the fact that this is part of our future. Does your recovery plan include ways to try to prevent this in the future, to try to sort of flood-proof things if this is going to be happening more often?
Great question. So first thing is to get our utilities back online. Like, they had 2 sewer plants, the village and a town in that community. They've been completely overwhelmed. Some of it is intact. Some of it on Sunday night where we found the remains of the unfortunate lady that we lost was right near one of our sewer plants, and there was a 15-inch main that had just been severed. It just went right into the Hudson River. So those are the initial things, so we can at least get water and sewer and electricity back to the folks that live in that area. But as she mentioned, you need to build back bigger and better. I don't know if you could ever do anything in that region that can withstand a storm like we had, 8 inches of rain in just a few hours of time. But we could definitely build that infrastructure better. It's all old. It's all archaic. So there definitely could be a significant improvement.
Stephen Newhouse, thank you so much. Again, we appreciate you joining us on a busy day. Good luck to you as you begin this recovery process.
This morning, NATO members are gathering for the start of a 2-day summit that could have major implications for the war in Ukraine. President Biden has joined other NATO leaders in Lithuania for the meeting. High on the agenda is the future of Ukraine's relationship with the military alliance, including how or when Ukraine could become a member. NATO Secretary General says he supports fast-tracking the membership.
I'm confident that we will make strong and united decisions on Ukraine, both to sustain and step up our support. I'm also confident that on the membership issue, allies will reaffirm that Ukraine will become a member.
NBC News correspondent Ali Arouzi joins us now from the Lithuanian capital. So, Ali, we know NATO's leader is pushing to fast-track Ukraine's NATO membership. Can we expect to see consensus on this issue from all NATO members? And what's the Biden administration saying about it?
Hey, Joe. Well, there is a split amongst NATO members whether to fast-track Ukraine into NATO or not. There are some countries that want to see this happen. The Balkan states in this region, which are in Russia's orbit, want to see that happen quickly. Poland wants to see that happen quickly. The UK wants to see that happen quickly. But the Biden administration wants some restrictions. They don't want this fast-tracked. They have some issues with Ukraine's democratization. Germany also agree with the U.S. on this issue. Now, President Biden met with Stoltenberg this morning. He praised him, saying that there was nobody more experienced to lead NATO. And he spoke about, that the language for putting Ukraine into NATO is all correct. But that's falling on deaf ears in Ukraine. Ukraine is very frustrated about this. They feel that this is a continuation of the 2008 Bucharest summit, where commitments were made, but Ukraine wasn't allowed in. And just this morning, President Zelensky tweeted out that it's absurd that Ukraine doesn't have a clear track to join NATO. So there is a clear divide amongst the countries. What is for sure is that they cannot join NATO while this conflict is ongoing, and Ukraine realizes that as well, because that will really broaden the conflict to include the United States and many European countries. So there's still a long way to go till there's proper consensus on a clear path for Ukraine to join NATO.
Ali, one country that is set to become the next member of the alliance now is Sweden. That's after Turkey dropped its opposition following talks yesterday. How did they manage to break that impasse?
Well, there's been a lot of wrangling behind the scenes to get Turkey to agree to let Sweden in. Finland was let in, but Sweden had a lot of other issues with Turkey. Turkey wanted some guarantees that the PKK would be put under pressure in Sweden. We've seen some elements of that happening. And I think there was a big push from NATO saying, listen, we need unity right now, especially in the face of this invasion from Russia. And I think that was what finally convinced Erdogan to let Sweden join. And let's make no mistake, Joe, it's a really big deal for Sweden to join. This is a country that really didn't want to join NATO. They were invited in 1949 when NATO was first formed. They didn't want to join. They stayed neutral in the First and Second World Wars. They chose a policy of a non-alignment in peacetime and neutrality during war. But the only reason they're joining now is because of Russia's invasion of Ukraine, because of their security. And President Biden welcomed the 32nd member of the NATO state. So this is a big deal for NATO. It strengthens NATO, and it further isolates Russia.
Ali Arouzi in Lithuania. Ali, thank you so much.
We're going to continue our coverage now with John Herbst, who's the former U.S. ambassador to Ukraine and now the senior director of the Atlantic Eurasia Center. Ambassador Herbst, good morning. Thank you so much for being with us. Let's begin with President Biden. He's taking part today in this meeting. It's specifically of this one particular group within NATO, the North Atlantic Council. Explain to us the importance of this group and also the president's role in that council.
Well, the thing is, this is the NATO summit. So Biden is going to be meeting with all of our NATO allies. And the importance is that they will then take decisions on major issues facing the alliance. We've already mentioned, Finland and Sweden are joining. They're going to be strengthening NATO's posture in the east, the areas near the Russian border. And they're also going to be discussing the long-term relationship of NATO with Ukraine, where we just a little bit of progress.
So President Biden,
as you already described.
And, excuse me, President Biden is also going to meet with the president of Turkey today. I want to ask you about this. As we heard just a moment ago, Turkey did agree to support Sweden's bid to join NATO after that initial resistance. There was this handshake moment yesterday at the summit to mark that. That's what we're seeing here. What can we expect from this meeting between the two leaders today?
I think this is going to be a very friendly meeting. I think Biden is pleased that Erdogan finally made up his mind. I think we expected this to happen, not at the very last hour. But it has happened in time for the summit, and that's the most important thing. There's a difficult relationship between Ankara and Washington, but one where I think both sides recognize the importance of working together.
A senior administration official says President Biden is expected also to meet with Ukrainian President Zelensky at the summit tomorrow. Biden's also expected to deliver a speech the same day, address the war in Ukraine. What are you looking for, both from that speech as well as from that meeting?
Well, the meeting is designed, again, to seek better cooperation between Kyiv and Washington. Of course, Ukraine is dependent upon the substantial aid that the United States has sent, military and economic. But they complain, rightly in my judgment, that we have dripped in that aid and we still are holding back weapon systems that Ukraine needs in order to defeat the Russians on the battlefield. So they will talk about that. Zelensky will also, I think, ask President Biden to take another look, at least in time for the Washington summit, at more forward steps that the United States could take, that NATO could take, to bring Ukraine faster into the alliance.
Ambassador Herbst, thank you so much. We always appreciate your time.
My pleasure. Thank you, Savannah.
New this morning, the legal team for former President Trump is asking a federal judge to delay his federal trial until after the 2024 election. Now, that's the case that centered on Trump's alleged mishandling of classified materials. The trial was originally expected to begin next month, but special counsel Jack Smith then requested it be delayed until December. In a court filing, lawyers for Trump and his co-defendant, Walt Nauta, say that beginning a trial within 6 months would, quote, result in a miscarriage of justice. The filing also points out that Trump is running for re-election and that Nauta is required to accompany the former president during most of his campaign stops. Trump was indicted last month on 37 counts. He's accused of mishandling dozens of classified documents that were found at his Mar-a-Lago home last year. Trump pleaded not guilty to the charges and has denied any wrongdoing.
Now, the Kremlin says Russian President Vladimir Putin met with the leader of the mercenary Wagner group and his commanders just days after that aborted Moscow mutiny. NBC News chief international correspondent Keir Simmons has the details.
It is bizarre, hard to fathom. Choose your description. What we're being told tonight by the Kremlin is that 5 days after a mutiny that President Putin himself said could have caused a civil war in Russia, that he described as a stab in the back, he sat down with those same mutineers, 35 of them, for almost 3 hours, that he heard them out and that he offered them new roles on the Ukrainian front line. I think what's happening is the Kremlin is responding to Belarus last week, showing us tents, empty tents where Wagner fighters, these mutineers, were supposed to be in exile. And President Lukashenko of Belarus telling us that actually Yevgeny Prigozhin, the leader of this group, probably wouldn't come to Belarus and live in exile after all. I think this is the Kremlin trying to pull back the narrative and say President Putin is still in charge. He sat down with these guys. He had a conversation, but it leaves so many questions. Where is Yevgeny Prigozhin now? Where are those Wagner fighters? And for President Putin, the danger is that looking like he hasn't crushed this has an impact on him. Of course, the trouble with trying to crush it is that that itself could cause a backlash. So it does appear that the Kremlin continues to try to navigate a very difficult balance, and that the implications and ramifications of what happened on that day of mutiny are still playing out for President Putin.
All right, Keir Simmons, thank you so much. And on a related programming note, make sure to check out On Assignment with Richard Engel, Revolt from Within, The Rise of Wagner. That's on tonight at 7 p.m. Eastern, right here on NBC News Now.
Coming up, teeing up to testify. PGA Tour officials are expected to face some tough questions in Washington today over the organization's controversial plan to merge with Live Golf. Why some congressional lawmakers are concerned about the deal. Next.
And if you're looking to get a promotion, take some time off. We'll take a look at how your success at work might be linked to the amount of vacation time you use. Good news. Stay with us. Welcome back. The head football coach at Northwestern University has been fired following a 6-month-long investigation into hazing accusations. Last week, Pat Fitzgerald was suspended, but yesterday, the university's president announced he had reevaluated the decision and Fitzgerald would be relieved of his duties. An investigation led by a lawyer found there was not sufficient evidence to say coaches knew about ongoing hazing, but that coaches had opportunities to find out.
Today on Capitol Hill, top officials from the PGA Tour will testify before a Senate Homeland Security subcommittee. At issue, the PGA's planned merger with Live Golf. The committee is expected to grill Chief Operating Officer Ron Price, as well as a PGA board member. NBC News Capitol Hill correspondent Ali Vitale joins us now with more on this. Ali, good morning. So what can we expect to hear from their testimony today, and what do we think lawmakers are going to be asking them?
Yeah, Joe, a big day at the intersection of national security and American sports, as we hear from one of the heads of the PGA here in front of Congress. And just to give you a sense of how much interest there is here, it is a subcommittee, but they went from using a smaller room that's typically used for these kinds of subcommittee hearings to actually moving it to a larger room because of the amount of interest in this hearing and what's going to be said today. Just a reminder that this is a story that's really been percolating on Capitol Hill with a lot of urgency, especially since the PGA announced that it would be merging with Live Golf. Ahead of this hearing, though, what we're watching is the PGA sort of try to lay out where it stands. And one of the men who's going to be testifying today, releasing in an op-ed today that read in part, given the well-chronicled legal disputes that have existed between the PGA Tour and PIF, we understand the fair and valid questions raised by PGA Tour members, tour partners, media fans, and now Congress, effectively trying to say ahead of his testimony, he gets where the criticism is coming from, but clearly his goal here is going to be assuage folks. And I imagine one of the ways that he's going to do that is you and I keep using the word merger here to talk about this. I imagine he's going to try to steer us away from that word and instead try to say partnership or other things of that nature, just to lessen the role of, frankly, the Saudi-backed Live Golf entering PGA and American sports.
So the subcommittee also sought testimony from the Live Golf CEO, the PGA Tour commissioner, the Saudi investment fund's governor. They were unable to testify. What more do we know about that?
Yeah, they're saying scheduling concerns, Joe. And of course, that's something that we often hear from people who don't want to be hauled before Congress. There are other ways the subcommittee can do this. They can, of course, escalate their requests from an ask to a subpoena. Not clear that that's where this is going at this point, but we do know that there's a lot of interest in getting as much information out there, not just on the Senate side, but I hear this from House lawmakers as well.
With this merger, I mean, what you're also probably hearing are lawmakers voicing concerns about national security, about antitrust laws. Just last month, the Senate Finance Committee launched its own investigation into the murder. Where do things stand with that?
Yeah, that's one of the things that's ongoing. And we actually just got a memo from one of the key lawmakers involved in that effort. In part, Senator Wyden said the merger raises, in his words, significant questions about whether organizations that tie themselves to an authoritarian regime, in this case, he's referencing the Saudis, that has continuously undermined the rule of law, should continue to enjoy tax-exempt status within the U.S. Of course, this isn't just speaking about the national security implications or the antitrust concerns, though certainly all of those are part and parcel when you're talking about Saudi Arabia and the way that in which now they'll be entering into business and the PGA, but then also how the PGA continues to be tax exempt. I imagine that's going to be one of the fiery lines of questioning that we hear. And look, this is a rare moment, I think, where we're going to see some of the more firebrand members on the Republican side, people like Senator Ron Johnson, really marching in more of a lockstep posture with some of their more progressive Democratic, generally rivals, but in this case, counterparts. This is one of those issues that kind of has created some strange partnerships on Capitol Hill. But that's a reminder. That's what happens when you get to the national security front. And I guess sports, too. Team shirts don't always matter as much as we think they do.
Lots of opinions and perhaps some bipartisanship here. All right, Ali Vitale, thanks so much.
Well, turning now to the ongoing humanitarian crisis in Haiti. The assassination of the president 2 years ago has left the country in anguish, suffering gang violence and hunger. Across the world, demonstrators now calling for relief for the Caribbean nation. NBC News correspondent Priscilla Thompson has the latest.
Thousands taking to the streets across the Americas. From Miami to Port-au-Prince, in the same streets that for months have been ravaged by gang violence, political instability, and corruption, a demand for change. The uproar comes amid escalating violence in the impoverished nation. As in recent years, some 200 gangs have effectively taken over parts of the country, per a U.S. government commissioned report. The United Nations estimating gangs control up to 80% of the capital city, Port-au-Prince, where Marie Brunesh lives and runs the nonprofit Together for Haiti, focused on providing resources and support to residents. How would you describe what it's like in Port-au-Prince right now?
It's very sad, especially for the young people, because we are the first victim of the insecurity kidnapping, gang violence.
Jean-Marc Biquet is the head of mission in Haiti for Doctors Without Borders. Last week, the group shut down a trauma facility in the nation's capital after 20 masked gunmen stormed the hospital and kidnapped a patient.
They immediately asked all the staff to lay down on the floor, saying, "We are going to shoot you. We are looking for that specific person who you are treating. We want to take that person out of here."
The Caribbean country has been in free fall since the assassination of the president, Jovenel Moïse, 2 years ago, which left the country without an effective government. The UN calling the current situation one of the worst human rights crises in decades, adding that violent crimes, including homicide, rape, kidnapping, and lynching, more than doubled in the first quarter of 2023 compared to 2022.
I've heard appalling accounts of women and girls being gang raped and of people being burned alive. The world must act now to stem the violence and instability.
Gangs have burned houses and buildings, displacing more than 165,000 residents, according to the Migration Policy Institute, and taking control of major ports and roads, forcing thousands of businesses and markets to close, leaving half the population with limited access to food. Tens of thousands of Haitians have fled the country, some making the perilous journey across the Darien jungle between South and Central America, or crowding onto shabby boats bound for the U.S. or other Caribbean destinations.
I stay here to fighting for the people who don't have any voice.
Our thanks to Priscilla Thompson for that powerful report.
More international headlines now. At least 5 are dead in a helicopter crash in Nepal.
Claudio Lavanga joins us now from Rome with that and more. Hey, Claudio, good morning.
Good morning. That's right. A helicopter has crashed carrying foreign tourists has crashed near Mount Everest in Nepal. Now, rescuers say they have recovered the bodies of all 6 people on board. Now, the helicopter was returning to Nepal's capital after a sightseeing trip to the world's highest peak. Officials say the cause of the crash is not yet known, but a probe committee to investigate will be set up by the government. The tourists were believed to be Mexican nationals, while the pilot was Nepalese. Now we head over to southwest Iceland, where a volcano has erupted near the country's capital. Officials say the eruption began on Monday, and so far, no disruption has been reported. The volcanic activity began days after scientists warned of possible eruptions after recent earthquake activity was detected in the area. The region is known for its volcanic and geothermal activity. And we end up in South Africa's biggest city, where people woke up to the rare sight of snow yesterday. Residents of Johannesburg were stunned by the first snowfall in over a decade. And for some, this was their first snow day ever. Officials say cold weather conditions are expected throughout the week. Johannesburg last had snow 11 years ago, in August 2012. And I'm really envious, guys. It's 100 degrees here in Rome. I could do with some snow.
Ooh. We'd love to see you making some snow angels too, Claudio. I love when people do that, no matter how thin the snow is.
Yeah,
it's like, this is my chance. I'm doing it.
Thank you, Claudio.
Yeah. Coming up, reps and rest.
Why researchers say the mental health benefits of exercise are directly linked to the amount of sleep you get. We've got that and more in your weekly mental health check-in just ahead.
2 social media superstars are pushing a new energy drink called Prime, and critics say it could be potentially dangerous for their young followers.
As NBC's Ann Thompson explains, the FDA is now being called on to investigate the high amounts of caffeine by one of Washington's most powerful lawmakers.
It is the drink with buzz among kids. Prime Energy, the newest addition to influencers Logan Paul and KSI's Prime Drink line. The pair has almost 64 million YouTube subscribers. The drink now in the crosshairs of Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer.
Buyer and parents beware, because it's a serious health concern for the kids it so feverishly targets.
Schumer wants the FDA to investigate Prime Energy's marketing and caffeine content. It has lots of it, 200 milligrams per 12 ounces. That's almost as much as 6 cans of Coke or 2 Red Bulls. Though the label says the drink is not recommended for children under 18, its cans are similar to the wildly popular caffeine-free Prime Hydration sport drink.
Is there any circumstance which a teenager should have 200 milligrams of caffeine?
A normal teenager should not need that much caffeine ever.
Dr. Minnick says the risks are anxiety, sleep disruption, and cardiac issues.
Caffeine can cause heart palpitations. It can cause chest pain. If a patient perhaps has an undiagnosed cardiac issue, it can exacerbate that.
In a statement, the company says it complied with all FDA guidelines and welcomes discussions with the FDA or any other organization to protect consumers, making sure the buzz is just popularity. Dr. Minnick, a mother of 4 herself, suggests that parents read labels, talk to their kids, and be sure they know just what the kids are consuming. She also suggests that there are other drinks out there that look cool but don't have nearly the caffeine. And if the goal is to keep the kids hydrated, she says water is your best option. Back to you.
All right, Ann, thanks so much.
Time now for our weekly mental health check-in. We actually have a good reason for you to hit that snooze button. That's because more sleep could mean brain improvement for middle-aged people who exercise.
Yeah, plus some research shows that people who are involved in religion, practicing prayer, have lower levels of stress. We've got more on why that is. Let's bring in Dr. Soumya Dave for more on these headlines. She is a psychiatrist and author of What a Happy Family, and of course, a friend of the show. Doctor, always great to have you with us. Thank you for joining us. So let's start with research from London that found what Joe was just mentioning, these middle-aged people who exercise. But then if you're not sleeping enough, you may not actually be seeing the benefits of that working out and what it has on your mental health. Walk us through why that is, the link here.
So exercise can have a lot of mental benefits. That can include improved memory, improved learning, improved attention. But what researchers at University College London found is that when people in their 50s and 60s exercise, they actually experienced a decline in those areas, learning, memory, and attention, when they slept for less than 6 hours. So we know that exercise is important, and we know that sleep is important. And now it might be valuable to think about the link between the two, and specifically how exercise and sleep are related and can maximize one another.
All right, so something very different from exercising. Several studies found people who pray or attend worship services regularly, they tend to have reduced levels of stress, reduced levels of anxiety, some cases, better health-related quality of life. So what is it about religion that brings people to this calmer space? And is it possible to reach these benefits without actually being religious?
So there are so many studies finding links between religious or spiritual practices and improved health in a lot of different areas. Now, healthy behaviors are what my colleagues and I like to call socially contagious, which means that when we are around people who give us hope, who hold us accountable, who give us meaning, we really benefit from that. So any sort of practice that helps us have more socialization, more connection with people, more meaning, a greater sense of purpose, all of those things are beneficial to us in the long term, no matter what form they come in.
Yeah, I think having some faith, can help you in terms of just like lowering your anxiety generally. Also, I want to switch now to talk about climate. And I know a lot of people, myself included, climate anxiety is real. And specifically, I want to talk about that wildfire smoke from those Canadian wildfires that was blanketing the Northeast. And while we all know that it was super bad for our lungs, it was tough for some of us to breathe, to be outside. Research now shows that it could also be bad for your mental health. It's probably not surprising to a lot of people, but walk us through how exactly that is, that could have an impact on our mental health. Why?
So there is more and more research showing that association that you just talked about, that increased air pollution can lead to a lot of poor mental health outcomes. Now, that includes increased anxiety, behavioral changes, especially in children, emotional dysregulation. There was one study in JAMA that also found that people exposed to more ozone experienced higher rates of depression. Now, the why behind this is still being investigated. And what we do know is that when we take in air pollutants, they cause inflammation and stress to ourselves on a cellular level. So I do recommend staying indoors as much as possible if you're in an area with greater air pollution, having that KN95 or N95 mask, talking to a mental health provider if you feel like you're noticing an emotional change, and of course seeing if there's some kind of action you can take in climate change in general.
So we know if it's not smoky, you got millions soaking up the sun at the beach, or maybe at a pool, putting on that bathing suit. And that can be a major source of anxiety. One study shows 76% of women have skipped at least one summer activity because of their appearance. So real quickly, how can we embrace how we look and learn to love the skin we're in?
Yeah.
So I love the idea of body neutrality, which is not seeing our bodies as good or bad, but appreciating them for what they do and how they just are, and also focusing on experiences that have nothing to do with how we look. So if we're going to the beach, like we just talked about, can we focus on how the sand feels underneath our feet? Can we focus on what it's going to feel like to take in the ocean air and what memories we're going to make? So really expanding our scope of what we are focusing on when we're having these really great experiences.
Absolutely. So much good information packed in today. Dr. Dave, always good to see you. Thank you so much. Coming up, Sarah Silverman is taking Meta and OpenAI to court.
Yeah, she's claiming they're using her content along with others without permission to make their technology work better. We're going to tell you more about this latest battle over artificial intelligence. You're watching Morning News Now.
We're back now with new details on a lawsuit filed by comedian Sarah Silverman and 2 authors.
They're suing Meta and OpenAI, alleging that those companies are using their content without permission to make their apps work better overall. Meta and OpenAI, which is a private company backed by Microsoft, have not yet responded to requests for comment. NBC News legal analyst Danny Savalos joins us now to help break down what this case is about. Danny, good morning. So first of all, give us a little background. What is it Silverman and these 2 authors are actually alleging here?
Invention and creation has always relied on the creations of those that came before us. And it's understood that as we go out in the world and we create, we're relying on that past history. But what happens when it's not a human mind that is acquiring that information, but AI, and specifically AI for profit? That's what this lawsuit is about. The argument here is that, hey, Meta's essentially, at least allegedly, admitted that it got its information from another source. That source's company admits it got it from another source, and that source, according to the complaint, blatantly rips off these copyrighted materials, including books by Sarah Silverman. But what's amazing is that this court may have to decide, really as a case of first impression, where can AI get its information? Where can it learn without violating copyright creation of other authors?
So how can a line be drawn? I mean, I know that's kind of what this whole case is going to be about here, but what does it mean? It seems like there's so much on the internet that maybe is something similar, book reviews, things like that. How can you draw a line?
Yeah, this is why I think this lawsuit is critical for the future of AI. I may be a little alarmist here, but I really do think that figuring out the contours of copyright law as it relates to something that copyright law, when it was created, never could have imagined it would be dealing with. How do we deal with something that if a human did it, if I went out and if I could read all of these books and force them into my brain and then talk to you about them, then that would be perfectly lawful. But what happens when it's a computer doing it, and a computer doing it for profit, when it's not really human thought? I think we still all agree that AI is not human thought.
Right.
It's taking this in, it's using it. We may not know exactly how. We may not know how it may use it in the future, but it's creating this product, this service, off the back, at least according to the complaint, of these copyrighted works. So how do we deal with that in copyright law?
There are a lot of content creators out there in so many ways. I feel like the stakes are high here. I mean, could we see a lot more of these types of lawsuits?
We're talking about Sarah Silverman because she's famous, but this is a class action. That means that the plaintiffs now hope to get it certified to include everybody who's affected, as they describe in the lawsuit. That could be a lot of holders of copyrights. It could be self-publishers. It could be anybody who throws their stuff out on the internet. It could be anything that's posted on the internet that these companies are using to scrape to learn. So, yes, not only does this tell us that there are going to be future lawsuits, this lawsuit itself is much bigger potentially than just Sarah Silverman and 2 other authors. Those are just going to be representative plaintiffs if this becomes a class action. The class will be massive.
We're still just in the early days of this technology, so there's just so much more that can happen down the road. All right, Danny, thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Well, we've got a little more on AI this morning. The White House is expected to brief senators on this controversial tech today.
CNBC's Silvana Henao joins us with that and other money news. Silvana, good morning.
Hey, Joe. Hey, Savannah. Yeah, that's right. So the White House is giving senators a classified briefing today on artificial intelligence as lawmakers consider whether to adopt safeguards on the fast-growing technology. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer, who organized the briefing, says it will instruct senators on how the U.S. is using and investing in AI to protect national security and learn what our adversaries are doing in the field. Last month, Schumer called for comprehensive legislation to address AI. Amazon Prime Day is underway, and it could be a test of consumer demand amid an uncertain economy and high inflation. Analysts say Amazon is offering deeper discounts than in previous years. Insider intelligence is projecting Amazon to make nearly $13 billion. That's up about 11% from last year. Amazon CEO telling CNBC last week consumers are trading down and searching for bargains. And the hottest ticket this summer may be Barbenheimer. AMC says more than 20,000 members of its Subs loyalty program have bought tickets to watch a double feature of Barbie and Oppenheimer, which both come out next Friday. Fans have created T-shirts, posters, and are following marketing for both films. AMC saw a 33% increase over the weekend in the number of people deciding to create their own double feature, seeing both movies on the same day. Barbie and Oppenheimer have a combined runtime of just over 5 hours, not including trailers, guys.
Pretty sure this is the only thing that Barbie and Oppenheimer have in common.
Exactly.
No, and have you seen the stuff where it's like, you better see Oppenheimer first, followed by Barbie, or otherwise something's up with you. Yeah, it's so funny. All right, Silvana, thanks so much.
You got it.
We've been keeping up with all the latest things about summer vacation, but it turns out new research published by the Wall Street Journal shows that some Americans just aren't buying in.
That's right. For workers that actually get paid vacation time, nearly half said they took less time off than they were offered. Joanne Littman, the author of that article and the book Next, The Power and Reinvention in Life and Work, joins us now with some thoughts on why taking vacation is so essential. Joanne, good morning. It's so good to have you with us, and what a fun topic. Let's encourage everybody, take your vacation. I love this. So tell us, though, I mean, I think a lot of people might think the less vacation that you take, the more that you're grinding, you're at work, the better your chances are of getting promoted, but it seems like that's not exactly what you found.
That's exactly right. It's exactly the opposite of what you might think. So we know, because, you know, I did all this research for my book, Next, The Power of Reinvention in Life and Work. I spent 3 years looking at innovation, creativity. How do we come up with these new breakthrough ideas? And one of the things that I found is, and in fact, I have an entire chapter on the importance of taking a break. But not just taking a break in terms of work, actually taking your vacation, which is something that all of us have such a hard time doing. There's so much guilt about taking a vacation. But the fact is, what the research will show you, and there's tons of studies on this, we know that it reduces, when you take vacation, reduces stress, anxiety, depression, even heart disease. But what's also been increasingly clear is when you take vacation, it is good for your career, and that actually, when you do take your vacation, you're more likely to be promoted. Your work product is better, and you do better work for your clients, and employees are happier as well.
So, Joanne, I mean, what you've learned, are people taking full weeks? Are they taking just a day or two? What is the actual amount that seems to be the most beneficial?
Yeah, this is such a great question. I had the same question myself, so I sort of dug into the research to see what we can find about that. And while long vacations are actually quite good for you, like a couple of weeks are quite good because it takes, you know, several days to sort of unwind and actually, and particularly if you disconnect, by the way, every piece of research will tell you you should actually step away from the electronic devices, which is especially hard, but really important. But there's other research that showed that even if you can't get away for a long vacation, that even taking long weekends, extra days, is actually quite helpful. And if you take throughout the year shorter breaks, it is the equivalent of taking one big break. And one other option for those of us who are lucky enough to have this, not everybody can do this, obviously, but sabbaticals. Sabbaticals are huge. And there's a lot of research on that. And in fact, companies like BCG, the big consulting firm, now offer the opportunity for their employees to take 8 week sabbaticals.
So it makes a lot of sense that, you know, the better rested we are, the better balanced we feel, the more time that we get to kind of be more of a complete, happy person, that we show up at work better as well. But that doesn't take away the fact that it can be kind of scary or tough to ask for that time off, especially certain workplaces, certain bosses. Any advice on the best way to frame requests to get that vacation time that you need, and also kind of make it known, hey, this is going to be better for me and us in the long run?
Yeah, that's such a great question. This is part of why we feel so guilty, is because, first of all, a lot of this is self-imposed, that we feel like the whole place is going to fall apart if we step away, which generally it won't. But beyond that, I do think that the onus really does need to be on the employer. The employer needs to realize that having a burned out workforce is not good in any dimension whatsoever. And I did find that there are companies that are actually starting to incentivize or impose vacation time on their people. And I can give you 3 quick examples of ways companies can do this. First is, believe it or not, some companies are actually forcing their employees to take a break. Goldman Sachs this year just started requiring employees to take a 3-week vacation, which is pretty astonishing. Second way is some companies are doing these company-wide shutdowns. And this is interesting. The reason they do these company-wide shutdowns around holidays, around Christmas, some companies did it last week around July 4th. And the reason they do it is to prevent that sort of guilt, right? So people will truly disconnect and the whole company is shut down, so you don't have to worry about things happening while you're not there. And then the third thing that some companies are doing is offering vacation incentives of $1,000, $2,000 that you can put toward your vacation. And companies like Evernote, Bamboo HR, Calendly are all sort of offering these kinds of stipends.
Wow, a 3-week vacation. You must leave for 3 weeks. I like that.
I do too. God, I didn't even do that when I got
Our
married.
bosses
You
are
get
listening.
So yeah, I know, right?
Right. Joanne, thanks so much. That was really interesting.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Coming up,
Thanks
a
for having me.
historic home run derby.
How Mariners player Julio Rodriguez slugged his way into the record books in Seattle. And he's not the only player who made history last night. We'll have a recap next.
Welcome back. Some historic slugging last night by Mariners baseball player Julio Rodriguez, who knocked out Mets star Pete Alonso from the annual Home Run Derby. For non-baseball fans, this is that annual contest to see which of 8 players can hit the most home runs in a set time. Rodriguez belted 41 homers, a new record for a single round, while Alfonso hit 21. In the end, it was Blue Jays star Vladimir Guerrero Jr. who ultimately won the Derby, which is part of this week's All-Star festivities in Seattle. Oh, yeah, his dad also won it back in the day, which means they're the first ever father-son duo to win. How about
Oh my gosh, how cool. And wow, I can't even imagine being that good at a sport.
Exactly.
That's crazy how many you just said. All right, thanks, Joe. Yep. Well, this month marks 33 years since the passage of the Americans with Disabilities Act, but decades later, many still face barriers to accessibility. Now, though, a new crowdsourcing app is working to make cities more accessible to all. NBC News correspondent Zincle Esamoah caught up with the entrepreneur behind Ahoy.
There's accessibility alerts.
For Jake Handel, getting around takes a lot of planning.
You plan your entire day and you plan where you're going down to the last little detail.
After Handel overcame a terminal progressive disease, he got the idea for Ahoy. Ahoy is a crowdsourcing app that helps people with varying disabilities navigate their neighborhoods.
It's the fear of the unknown that keep people not wanting to explore new places.
The app, currently piloting in Boston, allows users to input their specific needs. Then it shows them accessibility scores for locations in their area.
It's a great tool for me to, navigate the city.
Toby Thompson started using Ahoy a few months ago. He says the app's photos and reviews by people living with disabilities takes guessing out of the equation.
It shows you here all of the accessible information.
Take the entrance of this coffee shop. Thompson says if he didn't know better, the shop seems inaccessible.
It's a good thing that I have the app.
But reviews from the app reveal an accessible entrance through another store. Still, accessibility isn't the same for everyone.
There might be kind of a temporary ramp that doesn't really fit my particular need.
It's been nearly 33 years since the Americans with Disabilities Act was implemented. And in the U.S., only about 13% of municipalities and counties have readily available ADA plans, with an even smaller number of those plans meeting the minimum criteria for accessibility.
We need to be thinking that this isn't about code. We're talking about
civil and human rights.
Valerie Fletcher, the executive director for the Institute for Human-Centered Design, says inclusive design is all in the details.
We see an accessible toilet room that will have a flush over here. If you actually need to transfer from a chair to a toilet, it's really awkward to reach across the toilet to flush it.
But until the day accessible design is universal, Handel hopes his app can make a difference.
I would encourage anyone out there to upload a photo or write what a place has anywhere. And by doing that, you're helping people into your community.
Zinclea Samoa, NBC News.
Very cool. All right, that's going to do it for this hour of Morning News Now.
But the news continues right now. Stay with us. Good morning, and thank you for joining us. I'm Savannah Sellers.
I'm Joe Fryer. Right now on Morning News Now, state of emergency. Parts of Vermont are bracing for the worst after heavy rains triggered dangerous flash flooding there. And in New York, they're cleaning up after a summer's worth of rain fell in just one day in some areas. The devastation from the flooding now attracting the attention of the White House. Well, out west, that triple-digit heat wave now approaching record territory. We've got team coverage in just a moment. Unity on the world stage. President Biden is in Lithuania this morning for day one of a key NATO conference. It is a high-stakes summit with the future of the war in Ukraine potentially hanging in the balance. And the alliance could soon gain a new member after Turkey's surprise reversal yesterday, now backing Sweden's bid to join. We'll bring you the very latest from overseas as questions swirl around President Zelensky's possible appearance. Also, a decade unchanged. There is a staggering United Nations report out, and it shows that social biases against women are still prevalent around the world, with no reported change over the past 10 years. We'll dig deeper into the troubling data later in the hour. And primed to save. It's as good as Christmas in July for many savvy online shoppers. Amazon's Prime Day starts today. We've got the lowdown on how to get the best deal of your summer shopping spree. I have to wrap my mind around what I'm supposed to buy when it's not necessarily gifts for other people. Or maybe I get a head start on the holidays.
You don't have a shopping problem like I do. No, but I'm like, Prime Day, and Amazon overwhelms me anyway, so we'll be busy.
We'll get some advice to guide you through it. All right, we're going to begin this hour with the extreme weather that is battering the Northeast. Vermont is calling on all residents to stay indoors and seek shelter after a record amount of rain brought much of that state to a standstill.
Yeah, at least 2 towns are shut down this morning due to emergency health orders. Officials are also closely monitoring the Wrightsville Dam. They warn there's only 6 feet of storage capacity available, and any more rain could mean major flooding to the already drenched state capital. In New York, officials are also racing to assess the damage left behind by the storm. Governor Kathy Hochul acknowledged the damage was widespread and could cost millions to repair. Meanwhile, rescue crews are wading through the water to begin searching for several missing people. We, of course, have meteorologist Andrew Lastman standing by to give us a preview of what's next for this extreme weather pattern. But first, NBC News correspondent Kristen Dahlgren is in Vermont with more on the damage. Kristen, good morning.
Hi there. Well, this is Main Street in Montpelier. Swiftwater rescue teams have already been out there this morning pulling people from their homes, and the water is still rising. Take a look over here, and you can see just how quickly it is moving into the downtown area. Coming in from both sides now, 2 rivers that converge here, both spilling into the streets, and officials don't know how much worse it will get.
Overnight, an emergency unfolding in Vermont's capital city. The Winooski River cresting at 21 feet, inundating the streets with water. The catastrophic floods are the worst in decades.
That's the Langdon Street Bridge.
The National Weather Service says the river has reached major flood stage, a serious threat to life and property. Across the state, the view from overhead showing entire towns devastated.
A report of a vehicle submerged underwater with the headlights on. They believe it may be occupied.
This as more than 50 people had to be plucked from the raging rivers by Swiftwater rescue teams. Property destroyed. You can see here remains from a house sent floating down a stream Monday afternoon. Entire communities still cut off by flash floods.
No way, bro. Nah.
This is an all-hands-on-deck response.
It's the same system that crippled New York State.
There's no words. Just even unbelievable doesn't explain it.
While cleanup is just beginning, after what the governor called a once-in-a-thousand-year weather event.
We are in the midst of an extraordinary weather event that has just devastated communities.
Millions are now bracing for what today will bring, with extreme weather still hitting the rest of the country. Damaging winds and hail in the Midwest overnight, while extreme heat is gripping the South from California to Florida. Heat alerts are in place, and the index could soar into the triple digits.
And now officials here are worried about a dam above the city approaching its capacity. They say they may need to release some water, which would send even more water into the streets here. They are telling everybody to be ready to head to higher ground. Back to you.
All right, Kristen Dahlgren, thank you.
Let's keep going with our severe weather coverage.
That's right, and bring Angie Lastman in now for more on those heat alerts. Also, by the way, that are sweeping the country. Hey, Angie.
Hey, guys. It's another day of heat alerts across much of the country. We've got 53 million people included in this, and it does include parts of Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, Nevada, and parts of California. And we've even got part of Florida included in that. We'll talk about why here in a moment. But first, let's start with the Southwest, where it's just been an extended stretch with these triple-digit temperatures, really, well above normal for many places, including Albuquerque again today, 100 degrees. Phoenix, you're going to hit 110 this afternoon, and Palm Springs heads to 112 with Las Vegas at 107. As we look ahead to tomorrow, not much relief. Same kind of temperature range. We're still going to be into the triple digits for Las Vegas, Fresno, Phoenix, El Paso, you name it. We're really running well above normal for this time of year in that area, and we're going to continue that trend into the extended period. It doesn't look like there's a lot of relief for folks here. We're going on these extended stretches of this heat for places like Phoenix and El Paso, and we keep that going here well through the end of the work week and into the weekend. We move to parts of Florida where I showed you some of those heat alerts in effect, and they also are dealing with an extended heat stretch for folks there. But we've got to add in that heat index, right? It's a really humid place. We've got it surrounded by water, and that's playing a role in exactly why our temperatures look the way they do over the next couple of days. But here's the details for later this afternoon. We'll see temperatures in Naples hit 94, Miami hits 95. But look at that heat index value, 105. We've got 106 for Naples, 104 for Key West. And when we talk about exactly what's going on there, the past 30 days have hit a heat index of 100 or higher in Miami. We saw Fort Lauderdale hit the hottest heat index on record since records have been kept, 112. These are not temperatures you normally see, especially even in the summer in places like Florida. And there's a reason behind it. We've got unseasonably warm waters. We've got weaker trade winds, and those unseasonably warm waters are leaving us with warm temperatures and a heat dome that's kind of sitting overhead. This is causing a cooling effect of that sea breeze. So what that means is we're not dealing with the cooling air coming through with the sea breeze that we often see in summertime for Florida. So another hot day for them. Looks like they'll be dealing with this for the extended period, too. And we've got to talk about the rain. We've got the satellite and radar showing a lot of that rain finally tapering off for parts of the New England area. We still have some of the showers working through Burlington, but eventually this system is going to lift, and we're going to see much drier conditions for the later part of our day today and even into tomorrow. We'll still maybe have a couple of spotty showers left over, but this is going to be really important for that cleanup and to help alleviate those already swollen waterways. But we know that that doesn't occur quickly, so we still do have not just the flood watch for the additional rain we could see over the next 24 hours, but we still have those flash flood warnings in effect along the rivers because of the swollen waterways. And you heard Kristen talking about in detail some of the dam situations that we're going to be dealing with here in the next 24 hours, too. Meanwhile, in parts of the Midwest, we're dealing with some of this rain that will work through thanks to our next system. We've got anywhere from 1 to 3 inches widespread, but localized amounts up to 4 inches possible. So some flood concerns for folks there, and some stormy conditions, too. We'll see the potential for some stronger storms, including the hail, the damaging wind gusts, and even a tornado or two. The hail is going to be the biggest issue, and it is expected to be baseball size for places like North Platte, Rapid City, and extending up into portions of Montana. Getting into tomorrow, if you're looking ahead to your Wednesday, especially in the afternoon or even evening hours, Kansas City, St. Louis, Des Moines, Springfield, all included in this risk for severe weather into the afternoon and, again, evening hours. So it'll be something that we watch as that system slowly but surely chugs across the country, guys. It'll be another day where we'll have to make sure we have a way to get those alerts and a way to get the information on whether or not we have these flood concerns or the strong storms to deal with.
Absolutely. Information to stay safe. Angie, thank you.
This morning, President Biden is in Lithuania for the 2-day NATO summit. The talks are expected to focus on Ukraine's bid to join the alliance. NBC News chief White House correspondent Peter Alexander joins us now from the Lithuanian capital with more. Peter, good morning.
Hey, Joe, good day to you. President Biden is kicking off this summit, White House officials say, with a wind at NATO's back, with Sweden now expected to become the 32nd country to join the alliance. This really is a win for the president, who's repeatedly emphasized how Russia's invasion of Ukraine would backfire on Vladimir Putin. But there are notably still other key issues here that need to be ironed out.
President Biden this morning touting new momentum for NATO at the start of its summit here in Lithuania and getting ready for a key meeting with Ukraine's leader just a few hundred miles away from the fighting there.
I'm a very strong supporter of the transatlantic alliance. I've learned that nothing happens here that will affect us.
The military alliance getting a significant and surprising boost, with Turkey dropping its objections to the addition of Sweden, allowing NATO to expand its strength across Europe.
Rumors of the death of NATO's unity were greatly exaggerated.
It's a victory for President Biden, who pushed for the move, speaking with the leaders of both countries in recent days. The president has supported Turkey's desire to buy new F-16 fighter jets, but the White House says that was not part of any deal. Still to be resolved how NATO will address Ukraine's demand that it be added to the alliance. President Biden, who has doused hopes that Ukraine could be fast-tracked into NATO because it would put the U.S. at war with Russia, is expected to meet with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky here tomorrow. The White House is promising the leaders at this summit will send a positive signal to Ukraine over its path to future membership, but without any timetable. And the message to Russia, the U.S. says, NATO remains solid and strong.
Vladimir Putin has been counting on the West to crack, NATO to crack, the transatlantic alliance to crack. He has been disappointed at every turn. Vilnius will very much disappoint him.
President Biden just moments ago said that he supports NATO's commitment to send Ukraine a strong message that there is a path for Ukraine to join NATO in the future. But President Zelensky, in what really was an angry statement this morning, expressed his frustration that he believes NATO remains unwilling to make his country a member of the alliance, calling that, quote, unprecedented and absurd. Joe?
All right, Peter, thank you so much.
All right, let's get more on all this with Colonel Matt Dimick. He's the former director for Russia and Eastern Europe at the National Security Council. Colonel, good to have you with us. So as we mentioned, one of the biggest talking points, of course, at the summit is Ukraine's path toward NATO membership when this war is over. That's a big stipulation we're hearing from everyone. First, let's hear what Secretary Blinken just said about this earlier on the Today Show.
I think what you're going to see happen over the next couple of days is a clear demonstration of the progress that Ukraine has made toward eventual membership. That's going to be reflected in what comes out of the summit, as well as work that still needs to be done. And I think everyone's been clear, including President Zelensky, that in the midst of a war, membership can't happen. But they've made real progress, and the alliance will lay out the further reforms, both in terms of their security work and their democracy, that are necessary to keep moving down that path.
What exactly do you think that means, Colonel? What does that look like, especially at a time when it might not be entirely clear? There might not be clear lines. What's wartime? What's peacetime within Ukraine for who knows how long? What can happen here and when?
Sure, I think it's a deliberate decision on the White House's part and other countries within NATO that feel the same way. That sure, Ukraine's eventual path towards NATO is assured, and we want Ukraine to be in NATO, but that timeline is not determined. And of course, that's not welcome news to President Zelensky, who wanted a concrete timeline that says when this happens, then an invitation will be extended. And it doesn't look like that's going to materialize. So some of these discussions here at the NATO Council are just going to have to be, what are the conditions that Ukraine can count on to be allowed into the alliance? And that's just going to take some work.
What do you think this discussion, even just of that on the horizon when this war were to end, does for tensions with Russia? Russia saying that they see Ukraine's membership as a threat. Could just so much discussion about this, so much focus on it and when it could happen, escalate the war?
It's doubtful that there's any room for additional escalation. Of course, Russia and Vladimir Putin have thrown out a lot of dialogue about, all the threats about escalation. But we've seen Finland come into the NATO alliance, which has extended Russia's border with NATO considerably. Sweden now is on a path to be approved for NATO alliance. So Russia's threats really fall on deaf ears. And of course, Ukraine is central to what Russia conceives of its security interests. So they will have something to say, but it's really not up to them. And they've lost the opportunity to have any kind of veto over Ukraine's eventual admission into NATO. And they're just going to have to kind of deal with the circumstances.
I'd also love your take, Colonel, on just the expansion of NATO that we are seeing happening, Ukraine aside. Sweden took this step toward NATO membership yesterday after reaching an agreement with Turkey, which had previously voiced security concerns. We've seen this happen with Finland. What do you make of this expansion?
Well, it really shows the power of dialogue and continued engagement with Turkey. Turkey and Sweden have been working this out over several months. The United States and President Biden and our government has been extremely helpful in helping bridge the gap and offering F-16s to help sweeten the deal. So I think it's been the result of a lot of hard work, and it's a very positive outcome.
Colonel Dimick, thank you so much. We appreciate your time as always.
Thank you.
Well, disgraced sports doctor Larry Nassar, who is convicted of sexually abusing female gymnasts, is in the hospital getting treatment after being stabbed multiple times while in prison. NBC News senior national correspondent Stephanie Gosk has the details.
Larry Nassar was repeatedly stabbed at a high-security federal prison in Central Florida. The confessed sexual abuser struck twice in the neck, 6 times in the back, and twice in the chest, leading to a collapsed lung. He's in the hospital in stable condition, according to the president of the union representing prison employees, who also says the facility has been facing staff shortages, impacting safety and security. The Bureau of Prisons confirming Sunday's assault, but would not name the injured inmate. Nassar is serving what amounts to a life sentence for sexually abusing minors and possessing child pornography.
Violence wasn't what any of us were looking for. Vengeance is not what any of us were looking for.
Sarah Klein is an attorney for the victims and a victim herself.
Does it, in fact, make things more difficult for you today?
I think so, because here we are, right? We're dragged right back into the spotlight. We're having to relive our trauma. We're having to talk about Larry Nassar.
Among his other victims, Olympic gold medal winners, including Simone Biles and the entire 2012 London team. Ali Raisman became a vocal critic of USA Gymnastics and the FBI for their handling of the allegations, speaking to Hoda in 2018.
This is bigger than Larry Nassar. We have to get to the bottom of how this disaster happened. If we don't figure out how it did, we can't be confident that it won't happen again.
Simone Biles joining her in a hearing on Capitol Hill.
To be clear, I blame Larry Nassar, and I also blame an entire system that enabled and perpetrated his abuse.
USA Gymnastics and the U.S. Olympic Committee agreed to pay $380 million in a settlement with victims. Nassar worked for decades at Michigan State University, which also settled, agreeing to pay $500 million. In 2018, hundreds of victims shared their stories in a Michigan courtroom at Nassar's sentencing.
He betrayed my trust, took advantage of my youth, and sexually abused me hundreds of times.
Our thanks to Stephanie Gosk for that reporting. Now, this is not the first time that Nassar has been attacked. There was another incident at a different prison. Reports citing court documents say that Nassar was previously attacked in a facility in Arizona. Within hours of being put in general population, he was moved out of that prison for his safety. Well, coming up this hour on Morning News Now, it's the latest trend on TikTok known as girl dinner. And if you don't know what it is, we'll give you a culinary crash course later in the hour. But first, it's now day 5 of an all-out manhunt for an escaped Pennsylvania inmate. We'll have more on the new clues searchers have recovered and why they think someone could be helping him. That's just ahead. We're back now with a look at the ongoing manhunt for a prisoner who escaped in Pennsylvania. This chase is one of 3 involving people suspected in violent crimes who have managed to get away from authorities while in custody in recent days. So far, that fugitive in Pennsylvania is the only one who has not been caught. NBC News correspondent Ron Allen joins us now from Warren County, Pennsylvania, with the very latest. Hey, Ron, good morning.
Good morning, Savannah. It's 5 days now, and the fugitive, Michael Burham, remains on the run. He escaped from the roof of this county jail, police say, by using some bed sheets that he tied together to use as a rope. And now there are more than 150 local, state, and police officers, federal police officers, out there intensifying the hunt for him. This morning on the ground and from the air, police focused on the small, heavily wooded communities near the New York-Pennsylvania border in search of Michael Burham, 34, who authorities say should be considered armed and dangerous, wanted in connection with cases involving murder, kidnapping, and other violent felonies.
We are putting significant pressure on him. At some point, we will force him to make a mistake, and when he does, we will use that to our advantage.
Authorities say Burham is a survivalist with military training and believe he could be getting help after finding supplies and campsites they say he possibly used. It's the second time in recent months he's eluded police. Back in May, police say Burham spent nearly 2 weeks on the run as a suspect in a murder case, while allegedly kidnapping an elderly couple as officers closed in on him. After being brought back to Pennsylvania to face charges, authorities say Burham escaped.
Yes.
How concerned are you that this individual has eluded authorities now twice?
Well, obviously, that's a concern for us from the standpoint that he has experience in running from law enforcement.
Authorities will not say whether they have confirmed sightings of the suspect or whether they've been close to capturing him, well aware that he could be watching and following media reports about the manhunt. But authorities here continue to insist that they are confident that they will get their man. Savannah?
Right. Ron Allen, thank you so much. Well, turning now to Iowa, where lawmakers are set to gather for a special session to discuss the future of a bill that seeks to ban abortions after 6 weeks of pregnancy. Iowa would then join a growing number of states that have restricted or banned access to abortion since Roe versus Wade was overturned. NBC News correspondent Shaquille Brewster joins us now from Des Moines, Iowa, with the details. Hi, Shaq. Good morning. So just first, get us some background here. How do we get to this point, and have there been bans like this introduced by the Iowa Congress prior to this?
Yes, they have, and that as recently as 2018. The law the bill that will be voted on today is a nearly identical version of a law that was passed in 2018. A lawsuit was filed then. It was quickly blocked by the court and then struck down by the Iowa Supreme Court. The difference now is that now we are post-Roe. There are more conservative justices on the state Supreme Court here. So the governor last year asked the Supreme Court to essentially reinstate that law that was blocked years ago. The court deadlocked 3-3 on procedural matters, but said that if the legislature passes a new version of the law, then that's something they would consider. So that's what's happening today with this special session, Savannah.
Shaq, I know you spoke to an abortion nurse about this bill and how it might impact abortion access in the state. What did she tell you? What was some of the biggest stuff that you heard from her? And also tell us if access has already changed in this state since the fall of Roe versus Wade.
She said you're already seeing impacts in this state. Many people in Iowa, because of the uncertainty, many patients are already going out to other states to receive that abortion care. I want you to listen to a little bit of what she told me about the impact of this law if it's enacted.
We know that we're going to have to be really careful about how we're providing care. A lot of the pieces of the bill that speak directly to care are really vague. So there's lots of lawyers looking over things and seeing exactly what that means. For most people in Iowa, abortion will be illegal because by the time you find out that you're pregnant, can get an appointment, and Iowa also has a 24-hour waiting period in place. So they'd have to have both appointments before fetal cardiac activity was detectable, which is very early in a pregnancy.
So again, this law, this bill would essentially block abortions, ban abortions in the state of Iowa. After the about 6-week mark, if you listen to medical providers, that's before the point in which most women know they are pregnant. It would make Iowa join about 15 other states that block any abortions at the 6-week or fewer mark in this country, Savannah.
And so, Shaq, can we expect to see this ban signed into law today?
It looks likely. We don't know exactly when the governor will sign this, but it looks very likely that this legislation will pass the Iowa legislature today at some point. We know that debate must end by 11 p.m. in the Senate. That's kind of the deadline for when votes will start, so it may be a long night, but we can expect this law to pass in the legislature today. The governor called for this special session in the first place. She said she's supportive of this law, so we don't know how quickly she will sign it, but as soon as she signs this bill, it will turn into law and it will be effective immediately, which means it's possible that Iowa could be seeing this ban as early as tonight, Savannah.
All right, Chuck Brewster, thank you so much. Well, international headlines now, a deadly road collapse in Thailand. Claudia Lavanga joins us now from Rome with that and more. Hey, Claudia, good morning.
Good morning, guys. Well, that's right. At least 2 people have died and several others are injured after an elevated road collapsed in Bangkok, Thailand. Now, officials say that 1 person has died at the site and another one died later in a hospital. Now, while authorities are investigating the cause of the collapse of the elevated road, which has been under construction since 2020. Now we head to Israel, where protesters have blocked major highways after the initial approval of a bill that will limit the Supreme Court's oversight powers. The bill is part of a larger plan that has provoked months of protests across Israel by opponents who say it is pushing the country toward authoritarian rule. Lastly, in Canada, gorillas at the Toronto Zoo are having too much screen time, apparently. Officials from the zoo are asking visitors not to show the gorillas photos or videos as they can be, quote, upsetting and affect their relationship with their family. According to the zoo's website, one gorilla named Nasir has taken a keen interest in videos, and screen time will dominate his life if he had his way. Maybe they should show him News Now and see what happens there, guys.
He becomes our biggest watcher.
Yeah.
Like,
gosh, it's just
watching
amazing when you
Now.
hear things like that, though. Just reminds you of the similarities. Claudio, thank you.
Yeah.
Well, coming up, some troubling new information about biases against women that are still prevalent today across the globe. We've got more from that United Nations report after the break.
Plus, the queen of pop breaking her silence. More on Madonna's heartfelt message to fans following a health scare just a few weeks ago. You're watching Morning News Now.
We are back now with an alarming report showing shocking levels of prejudice against women around the world. Researchers from the UN's development program found there had been virtually no improvement in a decade, with nearly 9 out of 10 men and women still holding biased views. For more on this, we are joined by Kate Oren. She's a senior advisor on gender equality at the United Nations Development Program. We're also joined by Melissa Boteach, Vice President for Income Security and Child Care at the National Women's Law Center. Good morning to both of you. Thank you so much for joining us. I am just shocked by some of what is in this report. So, Kate, I will begin with you to just kind of give us the major findings here.
Yeah, thank you so much. And thank you so much for featuring this work. Gender equality has long been a priority global goal, but we have a long way to get there. So our recently released report, the Gender Social Norms Index, looks at beliefs and attitudes that the global population holds towards gender equality, or in this case, disproportionately against gender equality. The data, as you already indicated, is rather horrifying. We find a major stagnation in progress towards gender equality, with 90% of the global population still holding at least one bias against women. When we break down the indicators and look at some of the data in particular, it is pretty shocking and daunting, I have to say. Nearly half of us believe that men make better political leaders than women. More than 2 out of 5 of us believe that men make better business leaders than women. So we have a long way to go. But this report does try to raise awareness and help us have conversations like we're having today about some of the strategies that we can use to advance gender equality and women's empowerment around the world.
You are right. So important to talk about that, and I will get to that with you in just a moment. Melissa, let's bring you in to look here at pay inequality. The report finds that 59 countries where women are now more educated than men, they are still paid a lot less. What are some of the challenges women face when it comes to earning what they are owed?
Well, there's a few challenges. One of them is that we undervalue caregiving in this country and across the world. So women are disproportionately taking on unpaid caregiving work, whether that's childcare or elder care. And when they are paid professionals in that work, they're paid poverty level wages. And when they are doing it in an unpaid way, oftentimes it can affect their ability to participate in the paid labor force. Women are also facing overpay discrimination. There's been studies showing that when, 2 people apply for the same job, one named Jennifer, one named John, the woman named Jennifer gets offered less pay. There's a lack of pay transparency. And there's also just the fact that women and mothers in general oftentimes are seen as less responsible. When a woman becomes a mother, all of a sudden it's seen as though she's less reliable, whereas when men becomes fathers, they're seen as more reliable. So this is really about law, policy, and culture all conspiring, but it also means that when we invest in the solutions, we can advance gender justice through law, policy, and culture.
And Melissa, also quickly, I know in this report it says nearly half of people say men should, quote, have more of a right to a job than women. What can be done to tackle that?
I think that there's a number of examples of ways, again, in which changing attitudes and norms interacts with policy. So, for example, in some countries where they've had men's ability to take paid leave and parental leave, them working, that has actually given men more of a chance to spend time and to bond with their babies and to take on care responsibilities. And that is one example of a way in which policy can actually affect gender norms.
Absolutely. Kate, also an extremely disturbing statistic from this report. A quarter of people believe it is justified for a husband to beat their spouse. Walk us through some of the darker findings like that one in this report and how it is possible that such a large number of people still hold views like this.
Yeah, it's an incredible finding, isn't it? When we look at all of the indicators under the category of physical integrity, it's actually more than 3/4 of us around the world who have beliefs against women's bodily autonomy and physical integrity. One of those indicators in particular is this question around, is it ever justifiable for a man to beat his wife? And indeed, a quarter of respondents, a quarter of the representative population agrees with this question. So we have to understand then that this explains a little bit of some of the horrifying statistics that we know are true. 1 in 3 women in the world have experienced sexual or physical violence in her lifetime. Why is this? Why does this data persist? Some of the gender social norms findings that we show in this report explain some of that. And I really appreciate the last speaker's comment because it is about structural reform and social norms shifting that goes hand in hand to try to accelerate progress in some of these areas.
Kate Elrin, Melissa Boteach, thank you both so much. Kate, as you said, it's just so important to be having these conversations, reading this report, understanding where we are at, and really, I think it will shock some people and hopefully make a difference. Thank you both for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
Madonna is breaking her silence. It was a little more than 2 weeks ago that a health scare landed the Queen of Pop in the ICU. Now the singer is giving fans an update on how she's doing and when she'll hit the road for her big tour. For the first time since she was hospitalized last month for a bacterial infection, Madonna is expressing herself. She posted this photo on social media, along with a message that she's on the road to recovery and incredibly grateful for all the blessings in her life. She's also thanking her fans for their positive energy, prayers, and words of healing and encouragement, adding, "My focus now is my health and getting stronger." The 64-year-old icon was set to kick off a major international tour this weekend in Vancouver, the Celebration Tour, reflecting on her 40-year career. She's now rescheduling the 41 shows on the North American leg of that tour.
4 decades of music avec moi.
After 4 decades in the spotlight, this is not the first time the best-selling female recording artist of all time has overcome health hurdles.
That Madame X is a saint.
3 years ago on her Madame X tour, knee and hip pain forced her to cancel several stops. She later underwent hip surgery.
I'm still a baller. That's it.
In 2019, Madonna told me it's her nature to be a fighter, especially fighting for the underdog.
To go against the norm, to defy convention. That's just, I don't know where that came from. It's in my blood.
Now she's fighting once again, this time for her health and a return to the stage as she works to get back into the groove. Madonna says she didn't want to disappoint fans who bought tickets, which is why she's postponing the North American dates. No word yet on when those will be rescheduled. For now, she does plan to kick off the tour in Europe in mid-October.
All right, well, good to hear a little bit from her. Coming up, it might as well be Christmas in July for Amazon's more than 160 million Prime subscribers. It is the start of Prime Day today. And after the break, we've got the secret to finding all the best deals.
Plus, it's TikTok's latest top trend, girl dinner. Have you heard of it? Well, we're going to give you a culinary crash course as well as some of the concerns surrounding it. That's next on Morning News Now.
Welcome back. Today is one of the biggest sales events of the year. It is Amazon Prime Day.
It started early this morning and runs through Wednesday, which makes it Prime Days. Now we're going to bring you everything you need to know to get the best deals. Like singular, plural. All right. Brian Chung is here. We won't ask him to break down the grammar here or the punctuation or any of that, but we will ask you, what are folks buying this year? Is now the right time to buy certain things?
Yeah, well, I mean, it depends on what you're buying, right? So when we're talking about certain categories, there's no cut and dry way to say, okay, well, Walmart versus Target versus Amazon is going to have the better deals, which, by the way, Target and Walmart have their own events. It's a week long, so it's multiple days for them. But look, broadly speaking, there's some categories you might want to wait for. For example, electronics, you're going to see some discounts this week, but the steepest discounts, according to experts that I've talked to, have said maybe wait until Black Friday. You'll probably get the steepest discounts then. Things like, for example, mattresses or furniture. Actually, Labor Day might be even better if you can afford to wait a few extra weeks. So, again, look for what you need. Don't buy anything out of impulse just because you see the deals there. This is not the only sales opportunity of the year. But look, I'm seeing some pretty good 60, 70% off. So if the price is right, go ahead and get into your cart.
Get your holiday shopping done now.
Early,
right?
Yeah.
I mean,
wouldn't that be nice to say
literally the days before Christmas?
You gotta hide in the closet, though, for a few months. So,
no, I can't.
Okay.
It's not time yet to think about it. And who knows? You might want something you don't even want by then. What are you going to ask?
That's a good point. That's a fair point.
No. Not time for that. It's time for cleaning supplies, pet food. Tell me, though, you said Target, Walmart, and then, of course, we're talking Prime Days. How do we know what to buy where? How do we know where we're going to get the best deal?
Yeah, well, first of all, I need to kind of take a step back here and remind everyone that in some cases, you're going to need membership just to get access to the deals in the first place. So Amazon Prime, as the name suggests, you have to be a Prime member, paying that $150 a year to get access to it. At Target, you're going to be able to actually sign up for a free subscription through their Circle program, but then ultimately you'll be able to access the deals. Walmart Plus, it's going to be a kind of a hybrid situation. You can sign up for the membership to get early access, but then it opens up to everyone else after the fact. But other tips that you want to look at as you're shopping, compare prices. There's no price matching during this week. That's actually very important to note. At, for example, Target and Walmart, even though at Target, for example, they might price match in some cases, they are not doing it for special sales events like this. So make sure that even if you check something out in the cart for the store that you want to buy from, use store coupons, consider cashback cards if you have a credit card with that company.
A little bit of sad news here. Yeah, experts warn scams. You should be on the watch out for those. What should we look out for?
Yeah, well, I mean, this is the time of the season where there's going to be a deluge of emails, right? So order confirmed, order shipped, order arrived, right? And each one of those emails could come with links. This is a time when people who are malicious, who might be trying to grab your login for Amazon or steal your personal information, they're going to try to send you some emails that might look like it's coming from Amazon, or a text message, or even a phone call. Don't click on any links. I can guarantee you Amazon has spell check. So if you see any sort of weird
misspellings, that's such a good tip.
If you see a text message that says delivered and it's spelled wrong, well, I think that Jeff Bezos probably could have sniff that one out, right? So
or
I don't
when it's
think
from like at amazon.co.com.
Double check,
like
absolutely. Double check the URL from which it's coming from and the email address from which it's coming from. This is a time where people can definitely fall into some traps and click on some links that are not good. So just be aware. Log into the site and your account if you're trying to check on the status of your
or the app.
Or the app.
Then it's all right in there. You can check it all out.
We need to block out our afternoons for this. Price match yourself.
I want an update tomorrow on what you bought.
I'm anchoring all day.
We know it's not holiday gifts. That's not happening now. All right, Brian, thanks so much.
Well, it's days, so I'll update you after that. All right, more financial headlines now. Meta's new platform, Threads, is planning to expand its money-making tools.
CNBC's Silvana Henao joins us with that and other money news. Silvana, good morning.
Hey, Joe. Hey, Savannah. Good morning. Well, Instagram plans to bring its branded content tools to Threads. Axios reports that will help marketers collaborate with influencers on paid sponsorships while ads are still off limits on the app. Now, Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg has said the company would only think about monetizing Threads once there's a clear path to 1 billion users. Threads has already topped 100 million users since launching a week ago. HCA Healthcare says a data breach led to certain patient information being leaked online. The hospital operator says patient names, phone numbers, birth dates, appointments, and other personal details were stolen by an unknown party. Now, the data doesn't include clinical information or credit card, social security, and driver's license numbers or passwords. HCA will contact those affected and provide credit monitoring and identity protection services. And 7-Eleven has the perfect way to deal with the summer heat. A brain freeze. In honor of the chain's 96th birthday, it's giving away a free small Slurpee at participating 7-Eleven, Speedway, and Stripe stores while supplies last. Now, it's the 21st straight year of the promotion. 7-Eleven is also offering other deals for loyalty members today, including $1 Big Bite hot dogs, guys.
I love how we know it'll give us a brain freeze.
Yeah.
Still do it.
But still, it's so good. I love the Coke. The Coke one is my favorite. I love the Coke Slurpee.
It's fun, but there's always just such a wait, and it's like you could get it the next day for $3. Yeah. I don't know. Is that too cynical? I'm not into this. All right, Silvana, thank you so much.
Sure.
Let's talk about a meal craze that is taking over the internet. It is called Girl Dinner.
That's right. So women are posting on TikTok under this popular hashtag, talking about kind of funny choices for their party of one dinner time meals. So are kind of making meals out of things like cookies, chicken nuggets, cheese boards, goldfish, applesauce, sort of random things that then they're equaling dinner. Joining us now on set is registered dietitian Sam Previtt. She's also known on TikTok for her fun and honest takes on all things food. Sam, good morning. Good to see you. Thank you so much for being with us. So first, just tell us your thoughts on girl dinner and what makes up a girl dinner.
When I found girl dinner trend, I was like, I found my people.
Yeah, right?
Because it brings such a normalcy to just eating convenience foods in a way that we don't see. I feel like when you look at TikTok and Instagram, typically the food content has been so aesthetically pleasing and needs to look perfect. So girl dinner's just keeping it real.
It feels like updated charcuterie to
Exactly.
me, right?
It's like a leveled up charcuterie.
Exactly. Why do you think this trend is so popular with women?
I think for women, they're very intelligent. And they're like, at the end of the day, they've been thinking about so many things. They've had a lot going on. And so they open their fridge. They have a quick, simple, easy form of nourishment. And so they love it.
And so are there concerns, I guess, with sort of the nutrition of this or from a dietary perspective? Is this okay? And is there a way to make it healthy if it's not?
Absolutely. So as a registered dietitian, I believe that all foods fit. And so the two things I would like to consider with girl dinners are volume and variety. So are we eating enough food is the one thing I would look at. And then with variety, can we make sure we're getting carbs, protein, fat, color? That's going to help keep your blood sugars balanced and keep you fuller longer.
You know, we actually did this the other day. I didn't know anything about the trend, but we called it
dinner?
We called
You had a girl dinner?
We called it daycare lunch because it was all these little things.
I love that. That's how with my daughter we put them in the little bento box.
Yeah, daycare lunch.
Are you an influencer?
Hashtag daycare lunch. All right.
That's the new trend.
We often hear breakfast is the most important meal of the day, but dinner is important too, right?
All meals are important. So our bodies love to be consistently fed, consistently nourished. So I say every meal is equally important.
Yeah, and this seems like it's happening fairly often, right? Like, tell us just how popular the trend is on TikTok, never mind just how many people are doing this in their real life.
So I think a lot of people are doing it. It's millions right now with the hashtag.
On TikTok.
Exactly. But I think we can all agree we've had a girl dinner, like you've said. It's completely normal to sometimes just want convenience food. So there's nothing wrong with it.
I'm waiting to see the restaurants that market girl dinner and their own little takes on it. And you sit down to a menu.
An appetizer,
it's going to be...
instead of...
Yeah.
Love that.
I think
Sam,
that's coming.
Thank you so much. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Coming up, we are flipping the script with a genre-bending country artist who's now hitting the road with the legendary Shania Twain.
He joins us after the break. Stick around. Welcome back. Singer and songwriter Olivia Rodrigo is back at #1 on the charts with her track Vampire, and it's breaking some records for her. The 20-year-old is now the youngest artist to debut 3 #1 hits. She's also the first artist to have the lead singles from her first and second albums at #1. Rodrigo's new album Guts is out in September, and we can expect, of course, there are going to be way more #1 singles on it. Are you a fan, Joe?
I am a fan. I grew to like her when she came out with the driver's license this thing.
Yeah.
It was on SNL and all that. That's how I got introduced.
Exactly.
So.
Love it. Well, new music in September.
Exactly. Well, let's keep the music theme going here with our series Flipping the Script, which features people on screen, on stage, and behind the scenes shining a spotlight on diversity. Meet Breland, a singer who is classified as a country music singer, but really defies all genres, blending all styles into his shows. He's now bringing his talents on the road, touring with Shania Twain. Breland is here with us this morning. Good to have you with us. You are here in New York because you're touring with Shania, and tonight you are at the Garden, MSG.
Yes.
How does it feel to even say that? I'm touring with Shania Twain. I'm playing at MSG.
Every time I say it, I freak out a little bit, so I've tried not to say it, but it's an exciting night. You know, I'm originally from New Jersey, which is pretty rare for country music especially, but for me to be able to come home in this way, have a bunch of family and friends in the crowd, and be opening up for one of the most iconic artists of all time, it all really does feel like a dream.
And you're going to have so much family in the audience there. Let's talk about, I mean, you could say technically you're part of the country music genre, but you don't like to really be defined by one genre, right? I mean, talk about your style and how you kind of taking country and expanding the boundaries a little bit.
Yeah, man, I call it cross country. It's kind of a cross between country and literally anything else. So there are some gospel influences. You'll hear some R&B and some hip hop influences, a little rock in our live show. I just love music in general. I don't think you can really put music in a box. I don't create it within a box, and especially within country music, I feel like it's having this really big pop moment, but we still don't see too many crossovers between country and hip-hop in the same way that we would see between hip-hop and R&B or between pop and hip-hop. So I just want to make music that reaches this younger generation of people who don't see music as just single genres, and they all listen to a little bit of everything.
The Associated Press has actually dubbed you the king of collabs because you have partnered with so many great musicians, and you are able to sort of play around with different genres. I mean, why is that so important to you to do those collaborations? What has it meant for you, your career, your music?
Yeah, it's been great. You know, I think collabs give you a chance to share stories and experiences, learn from other artists, you know, be able to share audiences, come out and perform with them. From a business perspective, it's great, but then also just personally, you know, I'm someone that wants to be able to change people's perception of what country music can sound like, who's allowed to participate in it, and I feel like some of these collabs have done a really good job of expanding, you know, that umbrella.
Do you have a dream collaboration you haven't done yet?
Yeah, man, you know, I'm trying to get Drake on a country song. I've said this for a little while. I saw him dressed up like a cowboy a couple weeks ago down in Texas. I'm like, hey, man, quit playing with it. Let's get it going. He dropped Yellowstone in a song recently, Jimmy Cooks. I was like, bro, I didn't say this to him. I don't know Drake, but Drake, if you're watching NBC this morning, just know I got something for you.
It is out there in the universe now, Drake. If you're watching, that's the next collaboration. I want to talk. Your name is Breland. That is your last name.
It is.
And it really is paying honor to your family, right?
Yeah, it is. You know, the history of the Breland family is kind of wild. I mean, it's unfortunately an all too common one. We got that name through slavery, and you know, my ancestors and more recent, you know, older relatives, I feel like they've all been through a lot, whether it was literally being enslaved or being in prison or being in poverty or just dealing with debt. And I'm really the first person that's had the opportunity to truly pursue my dreams and make this whatever it is. It's an unbelievable, and it's a very American story, you know, and so I wanted to be able to pay homage to them and the sacrifices that they've made for me to be able to do this.
It's also a very American audience at your shows. I saw an interview with you where you talk about if you look into the crowd during your show, you don't just see a typical country crowd, right? What do you see?
Yeah, it really is representative of our country and the world in a lot of ways. You know, I've seen people that you would not expect to see next to each other, whether it's, you know, East African people in hijabs and headscarves or, you know, queer couples, you know, able to be there at the shows and feel accepted and welcome, you know, people of color, obviously. But I feel like as an artist, if I can get people who have potentially very different perspectives into a room and enjoying the same thing, able to find common ground, that's got to mean something. And so that's really what I'm looking for. And being on the road with Shania Twain, that's something that she's really made a staple of hers as well and is really important to her. So it's a natural pairing. Hopefully we'll we'll get some more people at these shows in the future.
We only have like 15 seconds here, but what's your message to someone who's looking at you and saying, I like country, but I feel like I'm more than country. I like what you're doing. What would be your advice to them?
Be yourself. Don't be afraid to push the boundary, and don't be afraid to flip the script.
All right. Awesome. Perfect for this segment. We appreciate that. Breland, thank you so much. We appreciate it. Enjoy the concert tonight.
Thank you, man.
New York with your family. That's going to do it for this hour of Morning News Now.
So cool. The news continues, though, right now. Stick with us.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.